Welcome to Built for This. I'm your host, Brian Briscoe. My podcast features captivating conversations with intriguing people who have found purpose in their lives through their career, family, or life experiences, and just why they were built for this. Through the stories that you will hear, I trust that you will be inspired and encouraged to find just what you were built for. So let's get started. And thank you for joining us again for this week's episode of Built for This. And I'm extremely happy to have the higher authority.
Oh, no.
As he's reverently referred to.
There's only one person who can say that, and it occurred way after our relationship began.
That's true. So. But nonetheless, Chuck Cooperstein, the voice of the Dallas Mavericks, is what you're going to know him as. We've been longtime friends, but Chuck, thanks for joining us on the show.
It's great to be with you, Brian.
Let's just go way back, and we'll talk about the Mavericks. Everybody's going to want to know about that, and that continues on for you. That thing called the Mavericks radio play-by-play. But, you know, I'm working at KRLD. This is mid-1980s. I'm trying to be a broadcaster back in those days. And you can attest to this. This is obviously way before sports radio, way before the ticket or any idea like that. So KRLD radio in Dallas was the kingpin of Dallas sports radio. Mid-'80s, we're looking for someone to bring on board to fill a spot. Tell us how that goes down. I know you get a call from the great Frank Gleber.
Well, no, it wasn't Frank.
Frank.
Ultimately, it was Brad. It was Brad Sham. But this goes back to when I was working in New York. Graduated from the University of Florida, and I went back to New York and worked for an outfit called SportsPhone, which was everything that radio was, except we did it through the phone company. And, of course, back in the days before the Internet, it's the way that gamblers primarily got their scores and didn't want to have to wait for the 11 o'clock news.
Yeah.
And, we would do it every 10 minutes. And then on NFL Sundays, it was every 2 minutes. College football was every 5 minutes. It was a very hectic time, but it was great. It really was. It was everything that radio was supposed to be. And, of course, when you're in New York, you got 2 football teams, 2 baseball teams, 2 basketball teams, 3 hockey teams, tons of college basketball with St. John's and Seton Hall, and we had racing, and it was just amazing. There's so many different things to cover. I was covering the Herschel Walker-led New Jersey Generals in the United States Football League when they formed in 1982 and played in the middle. They covered the Cosmos, and when the Cosmos were really hot as a soccer project. But anyway, so I was there, and a friend of mine had just moved to KMOX Radio in St. Louis, a guy named Charlie Slows, who, if you're a baseball fan, you probably know as the radio voice of the Washington Nationals now, and has been for a long time. But Charlie just moved to KMOX, and he calls me the week of the U.S. Open golf tournament that was being played at Wingfoot. And I was going up to cover it for SportsPhone, and he said, "Hey, can you do reports for us?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" It's KMOX. I mean, if KRLD wasn't the giant, KMOX was the giant.
That's right.
Yeah. So they asked me after the second round, or as the second round's going on, Hale Irwin is leading the golf tournament, and Hale Irwin was a St. Louis native, and they wanted something one-on-one. And so I went to John Morris, who was the communications director of the USGA at the time, and, of course, this is something you could never do today.
No.
Never, ever, which is, again, I know I may be yelling at clouds here, but the business was it was different, and it was better back then in a lot of ways.
Much more access.
But anyway, so I say, John, hey, KMOX has asked me, can I get 3 minutes with Hale after he gets done with all of his, whether it's, the regular podium or, whatever other TV obligations he has. And I promise it'll be 3 minutes. I promise. I'm not messing around. And I never did mess around with him, and he knew that because there were things that I obviously wanted to do. So anyway, I do the interview with him and send it back, cover stuff for them as I'm covering for other outlets during the tournament. And about a week afterward, I get a call from Brad Sham, and who I knew as the color guy for the Cowboys at the time was not the play-by-play guy at the time, but I really remembered him more from soccer than I even did from doing the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. And he said, "Hey, how'd you like to work in Dallas?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to work in Dallas." He said, "Well, send me your tape and your resume. You come very highly recommended." Mm-hmm. And so I sent it off like we all did back in the day, and sent about 500 of them, and got rejected about 500 times. Yeah. And 5 weeks later, I think I had called Brad once, like, where are we on this kind of thing? He said, we're still working on it. He said, I'll get to you. And 5 weeks later, from when I first sent that tape, he calls and says, "When can you start?" I mean, I never interviewed. I went through none of the normal processes that people normally go through in order to get hired. Yeah. And so he said, "When can you start?" I said, "Well, I got to give him 2 weeks' notice here, and then let me pack up and get down there." So, so I came and showed up at the end of August in 1984.
Okay, and let's back up to SportsPhone for a minute. I mean, was such a fascinating, as you mentioned at the start, concept of getting sports to actually pick up a phone way before cell phones. I mean, a dial phone or a pay phone, and call
a dime for message unit, which is how they charged you back.
And we get our scores. And so, how much heat did you ever get a call from gamblers saying, "Hey, the information you just gave is affecting"?
No, we wouldn't get calls per se. I mean, we would understand at some point if we messed up. Yeah, and because there were other people there, because there was a New York line, there was a New Jersey line, there was a Buffalo line, and so there were 3 announcers, and then there were other people there, helping us out. So. You knew if you said something wrong, you found out about it. But I do have a story about this. And,
okay.
So there was a very famous bar in New York called Runyon's on 1st and 51st. It was a big-time sports hangout for sports writers and literary people and whatever. It was kind of like how Joe Miller's was here in Dallas, back in the day. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so I go into Runyon's one night. It's late, and fortunately the games had ended early, so we actually had time and a somewhat reasonable hour to go into the bar and get something to drink. And a bunch of us are there, and we're talking. And the bartender is a guy I had known for a while, and he says, "Damn it, Chuck." Says, "You go too fast." And on a college basketball Saturday night, I could give you 26 scores in 58 seconds. So I was moving.
You're really
I was moving. And he says, "You're going too damn fast. I can't get the scores. I got to throw another dime in every time, this, that, and the other." I said, "Man, hey." And then, of course, a lot of times, if they were looking for a score, say if it had happened earlier in the night or earlier in the day, we had a supplemental line. So they had to make another call in order to
another 10 cents
in order to get the score they wanted. So doing all this, and there's a woman sitting at the end of the bar, and she's listening to all this, and she says, "Your name's Chuck Cooperstein?" And I said, "Yeah." And I mean, this is 1:30 in the morning. Like, who knows where is this going? Yeah. I said, "Do you realize you're responsible for 85% of all divorces in America?"
Well, there's something to be remembered for.
There might have been some truth to it.
Could be.
The other story along that, my first day at KRLD, Monday nights was the Landry Show, Ask Tex Schramm, and then the Football Writers Roundtable.
All about the Cowboys.
All about the Cowboys, and why not? So anyway, that first night, as Tex is doing his show with Frank Lieber, the writers start walking in, and hey, I'm the new guy, and I want to introduce myself, and so Gary Myers walks in, and I didn't know Gary, but I knew people who knew Gary, so Gary Myers walks in from the morning news, and Steve Perkins walks in from Dallas Cowboys Weekly, and Ken Sins from the Star Telegram is there. And then Harry James Dent.
The legendary.
From the Dallas Times-Herald, the long lamented Dallas Times-Herald walks in, and I introduce myself, and he just stops dead in his tracks, and bug eyes wide open, and says, no, there cannot be. There's no effing way that there is a real person Named Chuck Cooperstein.
He's called the number. He's called the number to get the scores.
I'm sure he called the number more than a few times.
No, and Jim did. Yes, he did. So you live.
Yes.
So was SportsPhone, was that the first job out of the University of Florida?
Yeah. That was the first job. And even at Florida, we were really lucky because we were a fully commercial operation.
Yeah.
We were owned by the university, but we were a 5,000 watt on AM, 100,000 watts on FM. We obviously carried all of Florida's sports. I got a chance to do morning drive sports really for about a year and a half, and did women's basketball and baseball and I always thought I was going to be a baseball guy. And then I realized that not so much there, but when I actually got into the business and actually started covering games at SportsPhone, and then of course later when I moved to Dallas with KRLD, realized there is no way.
There's a lot of games.
There's a lot of games
every night.
And I know how I like to prepare and do things like that. In baseball, it's just impossible to do.
Yeah.
But the kids did everything there, so I was really, really lucky. I got a lot of experience there, and then moved back home and. Was at SportsPhone for 2.5 years before I came to Dallas.
Now, you've been doing this a long time now, but you knew pretty early on that you wanted to go down, that you were going to be built for this, to do broadcasting, didn't you?
I realized probably when I was about 14 that I wasn't going to grow to be 6'9".
Okay.
Wasn't going to be able to play like Willis Reed as much as I wanted to. And I knew that I was not committed enough to hit 500 balls a day on the practice tee, even though I love to play golf and was actually okay. I mean, actually, thought about actually walking on in Florida at some point, but it's like Mark Calcavecchia was in my entry class.
Wow.
And later British Open champions. They hit it a little bit differently than you hit it. You might as well just stay in your lane and do that. I love sports. And just about every kid I know in New York growing up, in that period of time, loved sports. And I knew I could talk. And, I just knew that, listening to Merle Harmon do the Jets when they won the Super Bowl, and Lindsey Nelson, Bob Murphy, and Ralph Kiner do the Mets when they won the World Series, and Marv Albert, obviously, when the Knicks won the championship, and Marv did the Rangers as well, later the Giants. There was nothing more thrilling than listening to them do their stuff. And, of course, having a little transistor radio about, that square to put under my pillow to where my parents
what do you
maybe didn't, maybe they knew, but I don't think they did. That I could listen to the game, fall asleep to the game.
Very nice. I would think the decision to come to Dallas was not hard. You just said that.
It was not hard.
For SportsPhone. What about the decision then to go to Philadelphia?
It's a really good question. I think if you're talking to your younger self, it's like you're saying, just tap the brakes on it a little bit. I was 33 at the time.
Yeah,
and
we're talking about WIP.
And I wanted to make money.
Yeah,
I definitely wanted to make money. They offered the opportunity to do a talk show that I was not going to get at KRLD, and KRLD let me go. I'm just on difference of opinion of where the radio station was going, even though the radio station had that heritage of success, especially from sports, where at that time sports was their strong suit, but that was not the desire of the people in charge at that time. So. Philly happened really fast. I mean, I got fired on a Friday, and then like 10 days later, Tom Bigby, who was the program director at WIP, he called me and told me he was coming to Dallas and he wanted to talk to me. And the man who fired me actually recommended me for the job, so it wasn't it wasn't actually the end of the world. But I figured I could go to Philadelphia, big market, top 5 market, do something I had never done before, and go to a town where my then wife had family. I think if I'm going to move out of Dallas, I couldn't think of a better place to move.
Yeah.
But I didn't do my research as well as I should have, or that anybody should do when they're going after a job, and didn't really understand the magnitude of the man that I'd be working for.
Yeah.
He was difficult. He was a brilliant radio guy, but he was very, very, very difficult and really tried to change me. And I fought like hell.
Yeah.
I fought like hell to make sure that I was me. And so in retrospect, I mean, I wanted that job, so I took that job. But looking back now, should I have taken that job? Should I have waited for something, in Dallas or somewhere else? Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. But ultimately, like everything, it all seems to work out because, a little after a year up there, I got the call that the ticket was starting. Mm-hmm. The greatest kept secret in the history of Dallas-Fort Worth radio and maybe in radio in general because everybody thought they knew, nobody knew. Yeah. Nobody. And when I got the call to come back, it took a nanosecond to say yes because I never wanted to leave Dallas in the first place. And my then wife, obviously, her parents were still in Dallas, and it just made all the sense in the world to go back.
Well, before we talk about the ticket, we got a lot to talk about there. But just to backtrack, how did that, I guess, the departure from KRLD, then up to Philadelphia and the difficult time there, how did that help shape you and, I guess, make you stronger, even though it was very difficult times in your career and as a person? That there would obviously come great opportunities still to come for you, but how did that change you, or you get through that time?
You know what, Brian? I don't know that it changed me that much, but I became more aware of the radio business per se, and that was Tom Bigby's strength. I mean, really, he knew the business and he knew formatting, but he just didn't know how to deal with people.
Yeah,
and so wondering, after you leave your show, so I did a show one day. It's December. It's a Tuesday. The Eagles were off that day, and I was brought to Philadelphia basically be the beat reporter for the Eagles. Mm-hmm. But I had to do a 2-hour talk show that day, every day, and I was following a guy named Angelo Cataldi, who was who became a legend. He was pretty close to being a legend already when I moved in. But I mean, his show was the essence of what a great morning radio show should be. And then I had replaced a guy named Bill Campbell, who was the play-by-play voice of Philadelphia sports. I mean, he did the Sixers. He did the Sixers when Wilt scored 100. Mm-hmm. Okay, he did the Eagles, did the Phillies, did college basketball, did the Penn Relays. He was Philadelphia play-by-play through and through. And when WIP started, in 1987, I believe, so he was doing the morning show. He decided to retire. They got me. I mean, what's the old story?
Not going to be hard to follow.
What's the old story? You never replace the legend.
You want to be the next guy.
You want to be the guy who replaces the guy. Right. Yeah. So that was another mistake, but it probably toughened me up a little bit. Mm-hmm. But I was really hurt from the standpoint of you hired me. Let me be me. Mm-hmm. Let me grow into the role that that I know that I can play. And let the audience in Philadelphia who doesn't know me or never did know me before I went on the air, have them grow with me.
Yeah.
So back to this time in December when there was a Big Five doubleheader at the. In fact, it was at the Spectrum at the time. They didn't do it for whatever reason. They didn't do it at the Palestra, which I really, the Palestra. Everybody needs to go to the Palestra at least once in their life. It's one of America's great sporting gems. But anyway, Big Five is big in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Okay, it's huge in Philadelphia, and I'm trying to ingratiate myself, I believe, with the fan base in Philadelphia. And so I go on my first segment, talk about it, get to the break, and this 330-pound guy comes bounding down the hall and says, "Don't you ever lead your show with Big Five basketball. Don't ever, talk about the Eagles. He wanted Eagles. And it's, look, they're off. There's nothing going on with them. And it goes back, Brian, in a lot of ways to when we're KRLD, everything we did was based on the news of the day.
Sure.
And that's how I always looked at my talk show, even from Philadelphia to any talk shows that I did in Dallas. It's like, what is the news of the day? What are we going to talk about? It's not about creating topics, and it's not about a bunch of lists and stuff like that and playing off of that. What is the news of the day, and how are we going to talk about it? Mm-hmm. And he didn't want to do that. And so there was, there was a bunch of stuff, gimmicky type of things to try to do, the winners and losers or heroes and zeros or whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. But I like to think that I stayed true to myself. I mean, you took the punishment that went with it, but ultimately you just had to know, who are you? What do you believe in? What do you think works? What are your strengths, and play to your strengths? And he didn't want to play that game. Mm-hmm. I did, and it was a rather joyous day when about 3 weeks after I got the call from the ticket, and we had agreed to terms and everything like that, and I had started slowly clearing off my desk and what have you, and he looks and says, "You going anywhere?" I said, "As a matter of fact, I am."
Going to Dallas.
I'm moving back to Dallas. So, but the great thing about Philadelphia, I mean, the people were amazing. And I loved where I lived. I lived in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, which was very much akin to my growing up on Long Island, had a lot of the same things. Mm-hmm. But the people I worked with at IP were just, Angelo was great. Tony Bruno was tremendous. Al Morganti, who is still in Philadelphia, covering hockey mostly, and just a brilliant hockey guy. Jody McDonald, who works, does 8 zillion jobs for Odyssey. But we every time I go to Philadelphia, the one time a year when we're there with the Mavericks, mm-hmm. We always try to hook up and grab some lunch or grab a drink or something like that. They were just great people, and some salespeople there were great, and really helped me along and helped me and my wife along in adjusting to life in Philadelphia and the burbs. So I don't regret the experience. Mm-hmm. I really don't. It was hard. It really was hard, and I will say I was happy as hell to get out of there. Yeah, but it was a very good experience.
And there were going to be some really good things come your way right after that, and we're going to get around to the Dallas Mavericks eventually. But in the fall of '93, the winds start really circulating about some kind of weird thing called all sports radio might be coming around the corner somewhere. Maybe it's a little closer to the wintertime. But that was just, everything that I heard, it was just a revolutionary, ridiculous idea. You've got KRLD and WBAP, and you've got all these big stations around the country, KMOX, like you mentioned. But there was, this guy named Mike Reiner and some other people that were thinking about, what if we did all sports radio in 24 hours? And so how did that start to come to fruition? Obviously, the station goes on the air as Super Bowl weekend 1994.
January 24th, 1994.
Right. So before that, the collecting of the talent is being put in place and getting a signal together. And what was your thought process when you're thinking, well, like you said, it was an easy decision to leave where you were, but to come back to Dallas and this idea of we're going to do all sports?
I wanted it. Yeah. I wanted it so bad, and especially when I heard there were any number of radio people in the market, like Ron Chapman, say it'll never work. Mm-hmm. And I just knew it, from my standpoint, I knew it would work. And I knew, some of the people that were coming on, I didn't know everybody that was coming on, but I knew that there was enough talent and enough knowledge to make sure that it would succeed. So there was never any doubt in my mind that we were going to succeed. Now, getting on the air became somewhat problematic, and there were some moments after I had actually moved back from Philly, and like George and Craig had left KRLD. George Dunham and Craig Miller had left KRLD. And we're waiting for this to all happen, and we're just in limbo here, and some winds, some ill winds were blowing. It's like, is it going to happen? And finally, there was the ultimate meeting where they told the ownership, either you're going to do this or you're not going to do it, and you got to decide now what the deal is. And fortunately, Spence Kendrick said yes, and Dallas Fort Worth radio has never been the same.
Yep. And now here we are, 30 years down the road. Yep. The ticket's still going strong. Yep. Obviously, the early years were difficult trying to make a space.
They were the most fun.
Really?
They were the most fun because, again, it literally is us against the world. Nobody thinks we're going to make it. And so we just had the best time and developed the camaraderie that, frankly, the ticket has today, still has today, 30 years later, that, frankly, there is no radio station in America. Maybe when you and I and Art and Brad and Craig and all, when we were all working together, but we were a small part of something, of a larger concept.
Yeah.
We were it at the ticket. And the fact that, 30 years later, they've been able to keep that ethos is remarkable and really does set them apart from everybody else. And so it was just super special. And there were all kinds of messed up things. We were over we were on the tollway at the time where KZPS was. We were sharing a studio with them, and literally when we were taking calls, we didn't have a screen, so they literally had to write down the callers on a piece of paper and run from one studio to another.
Major market radio.
Just incredibly stupid stuff like that. But it was awesome. It was absolutely awesome.
Did you ever have any thoughts like, oh, man, what have I done? I've been doing radio for a long time.
No.
I came home, but no.
No. Okay. Once we started, never.
Okay.
I mean, you're waiting to start, and you're thinking, well, I came home on Thanksgiving of '93 and believed that, we were going on the air, pretty quickly, probably before Christmas, certainly before the end of the Cowboy season, and we didn't. And it's like, okay, what's the deal? What's the problem here? Are we doing this?
Yeah.
But once the go ahead came down, and there was never a doubt in my mind.
So at some point, I'm trying to think when, ESPN Radio comes along, your departure from the ticket, I guess WBAP's in there somewhere.
Well, I left the ticket after 3.5 years.
Yeah.
Because, again, they wanted to do things a certain way. I wanted to do things my way.
You're not so much the shtick guy, which is the ticket certainly
I'm
known
not,
for.
Although I did stand on my head for an hour on an inversion table after Roger Pavlik made the All-Star game. It's like,
it did an hour of your show.
How was that possible? But
I can't envision that.
So I was at BAP. Steve Lamb and Randy Galloway basically pushed Tyler Cox, who was the program director at the time. And, BAP had changed from country to news and information to challenge KRLD, and they were doing pretty well. And they convinced Tyler that I should follow Galloway and go from 8 until midnight and do a 4-hour show alone every night. Now, during hockey season, it was great because they had the Stars at the time.
Yes.
And I was one of the few guys in Dallas at the time, and certainly in radio or television, that knew a lot about hockey because I love hockey as a kid. Grew up with the Islanders, winning 4 Stanley Cups in a row. It sat 6 rows on the ice behind the Islander penalty box. It was good. It was really good. And that turned out to be great because in that time, my first 3 years there, the Stars went to the Western Conference Finals. They won the Stanley Cup, and they lost in the Stanley Cup Final. So it was a really it was a very fortuitous time to be there. But again, being on BAP and that blowtorch of a signal, man. Yeah. You're getting truckers in Des Moines, Iowa, and you're getting them.
Canada.
You're getting them down in Houston. You're getting them everywhere, and that it helped make the show. And I was thrilled to be on my feet. So I was there, and then. They were owned by Capital Cities, and I don't even think it was Disney yet. And then I guess in 2001 they decided, actually in 2000 they decided that they wanted to bring ESPN Radio to Dallas, and remember Kerry Korzanowski, who was the market manager at the time, said, "What do you think about ESPN? What do you think doing stuff over?" Sounds good to me.
Yeah, sure.
That'll work. And so Newey Scruggs and I, we did the afternoon show. We were the only local show on the station, which made it harder.
Yeah.
I think, just because especially on a Monday morning after the Cowboys would play, people want to hear what the local people have to say, and we didn't have that. They had Mike and Mike, which held their own. They absolutely held their own, but it's not quite the same. But we did okay, and we slowly built it up. And then when Galloway they decided to bring him over from WBAP, listen, that's like. Sending out a AAA pitcher to the minors and bringing in Tom Seaver to pitch.
That's going to be a tough one
or Nolan
to
Ryan
follow.
to pitch, as the case may be here. Yeah. So then that was an easy call for them, one that I accepted. And I moved to night. I moved back to 6 to 8, which is the only show I really ever wanted to do anyway, right?
Right. Okay, and then not too long after that comes the opportunity of your lifetime.
Yeah.
Where you get the chance to what you're doing right now and the voice of the Dallas Mavericks.
So
how does that happen?
Ironically enough, I took the BAP job in 97. 3 days after I take the BAP job, I get a call from Kevin Sullivan at the Mavericks.
Sully.
The job is open. We'd like you to apply for the job.
I like that.
I like that, and I told him, and listen, Kevin Sullivan is maybe the greatest front office PR figure that this world has ever produced.
True.
He's just absolutely incredible. And I told him, I said, look, I got a problem. I said, I just took this job at WBAP. I can't, in good conscience, go through a dog and pony show here. You guys know me. You've heard my play-by-play because I had done – it's just tons of college stuff with TCU and with Westwood One and doing or actually it was CBS at the time, for the NCAA tournament. You guys know my work. I said if you tell me that I've got the job, I will walk in to Tyler Cox's office and say, hey, this came up and I really want to do this. And I think he would have let me go, and I think we would have been on our way. But the president of the team at the time, he wanted the whole process
to
play
the
out.
interview
and
process.
I can't do it. So I thought that my shot had pretty well gone by the boards. Well, let's fast forward this 8 years later. ESPN has the rights, and the Mavericks has had the rights since 2001. And the Mavericks are ready to move Mark Followill up from radio to television.
Was Mark the one that got the job at that time?
At television.
Yeah.
No.
Television.
On radio, no. It was Matt Pinto.
Matt Pinto,
who is now the owner of a championship ring with the Oklahoma City Thunder.
That's correct. It is.
But Mark had filled in on some radio when Matt had actually moved to television when Jim Durham left the Mavericks. So all very convoluted, though, and saying in 2005, I wanted that job.
Yeah.
I mean, I walked into my operations manager's office, Scott Masteller, said, Scott, if this is true and Mark's moving up, whatever, I want this job. I deserve this job. And I hope I get this job. And little did I know that the behind-the-scenes wheels had already been greased for me to get it. So there was, again, never an interview, never a resume, never anything.
That seems to be your trend on this.
Along with that. So right place, right time.
Yeah.
And, of course, so I got it. And I guess the best story of all surrounding that was I was told in July, and they couldn't announce it until August, until everything, all the dust settled.
Yeah.
Late August. My son, who at the time was 9, and I are on a boys' trip to Toronto and Chicago. We literally we're in Chicago. We're getting ready to walk out the door and to go to Wrigley Field. And Scott calls me and says, "You got it." And so we're talking, and Jeffrey is listening to all this, hang up the phone, and he says, "You just got the Maverick job?" I said, yeah. I said, here's the deal. You cannot say anything to anyone.
This is going to be really hard.
You cannot tell your mother. You cannot tell your stepdad. You cannot tell your friends. You cannot tell mom and pop. You cannot tell anyone until I tell you, that you can do it.
How'd that work out?
Unbelievable. He did it. He did it, and he made it look easy.
Really?
And yeah. And so that whole day was just, that was incredible. Those 5 weeks were really fun. It's like, are you going to spill the beans or not?
Yeah.
And so that year, of course, is the year they went to the finals, and they lose to Miami after being up 2-0.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking, it's like this I'll be working into June every year. This is all good. And short summers are good and far more effective.
Yes.
And of course, found out the next year after winning 67 games and losing to Golden State in the first round, and it doesn't quite work that way. No. And you're on your merry way in the most amazing, wonderful experience that anyone could possibly have.
And now you are one of a very small group of guys that get to do something like that, no matter what professional league it is.
Right. Well, look, as I tell people all the time, there are 8 billion people on Earth.
Yep.
There are 30 who do what I do.
There you go. 30 get to do what you do. And, now what is this, 20 years?
21. This
21 years.
Yeah.
So I know when you're attached to a team and you travel with them, you're around the players and the staff and the coaches, so you develop relationships. You got to talk about being around the greatest player that's ever played for the Mavericks, and Dirk. And what was that like? He has to be a media person's dream, a superstar who was always accessible.
He was. He'd just stand in the locker room waiting for him, and he'd walk out after taking a shower or doing whatever else he had to do. Just look at everybody. Ready?
He knew what he needed to do.
He's phenomenal. Whatever compliments and accolades I could send Dirk's way, they're not nearly enough. Mm-hmm. They're just not. He was the most unassuming superstar athlete I've ever been around. He was just the most regular guy. Mm-hmm. My favorite story about Dirk was my first year. We're playing in L.A. against the Clippers. It's a horrible game, but he hits a shot late and we win. And we're going to San Francisco and we're playing the next night against the Warriors. And we get to the hotel and we're waiting on the equipment truck to unload the bags and the gear and all that stuff, and all of the iguanas, would hang around to make sure that everything got unloaded.
Sure.
And so the truck shows up, and it's about it's probably about 1:45 or something like that. And we, start getting the truck unloaded and walking back toward the side so that they can get it all marked up. And there's just one time I turn and I see Dirk slinging bags. And I'm thinking,
what are you doing?
You got to be kidding me. It's like
the franchise over there.
Well, I'm just thinking, LeBron wouldn't do that.
I don't think so.
Kobe Bryant wouldn't do that. Mm. And name your star at the time. The Carmelo. He's not doing that. But Dirk was. Dirk. He liked being around people, and there were so many people that were so good to him, and he just felt the need to, I just think, to repay it and just be himself. He was great. And listen, he nailed me too. My first year. This is also my first year. We're in Boston, and we're at shoot around, and we had been out late the night before, like too late, doing things things I would never dream of doing now, but were certainly I thought I was capable of doing back then. And we're at shoot around, and I fall asleep.
Uh-oh.
And Dirk sees me. Chuck, wake up!
Nice. Called you out.
Called me out. So deserved it.
Well,
absolutely deserved it.
That's
but just regular.
Yeah, regular guy.
Just totally regular and special. And it was an honor and a privilege to be able to watch him play every night, and even before the games, like watching him go out and do his warm up and the routine that he went through in order to get ready to play. It just showed you, in a lot of what greatness is all about, and how it manifests itself.
How did that style? I mean, did it rub off on you about like, well, and this is how I need to go about doing my daily thing as a broadcaster? Here's this guy's a superstar, but he puts in the work. And I know you're a great preparation guy, just like Brad Sham. You do the work. And so does that kind of rub off on people that are around him?
If nothing else, it just confirms what you're doing.
Yeah.
I won't say that he influenced me in that way. I think Brad probably influenced me more than anybody else. But I mean, I like to think that I had that gene in me. But when you're watching other people do it and how they do it, and it's not like you know everything. You may think you know everything, but you don't know everything. And there are people who can do it better than you. And maybe that's something that you can apply to yourself and how you can be your best version of yourself. Then you go ahead and do that. So, yeah, I don't think necessarily that that it was an influence as much as a confirmation.
Yeah. So now here, 21st year of doing this, and the NBA, we know 82 games. I mean, it's all the time. You got something going on, a lot different than doing a college football season or something like that. But now that you've done it for 20 years, what a couple of things that you picked up along the way is preparing to be a broadcaster that you could pass on to the aspiring wannabe people that say, boy, I'd like to be Chuck Cooperstein someday, but that you've learned over 20 years?
Well, basically to stay with it. If you believe it, if you believe that you can do it, then stay with it, stay the course, take those jobs that maybe, you don't necessarily want to take, but that give you the necessary reps, because it's all about your reps and continuing to get better. But it's a really hard business.
Yeah.
It'll probably be on my tombstone. It's the world's greatest job and the world's worst business. Because you know what? Because it only takes one to love you.
Yeah.
And it only takes one to hate you.
And
you have to accept the fact that will happen. Listen, I was fired from 2 jobs. Okay, probably haven't lived until you've been fired, right? Until you've been told no, and then are you going to pick yourself up and do what you want to do and what you think you can do, or are you going to give up and try to do something different? So, but I would say it's a really difficult business, broadcasting, but it is incredibly rewarding when you get to a place that you cannot wait to wake up and go do the work. Every day. That's what I'm most thankful for. I mean, I don't know that I'm very well suited to 9 to 5, and wearing a coat and tie and being in the office. I don't think that would have gone very well. But I found something that I love, and especially when we're in season and even out of season. I mean, I'm always reading because what's going to be. Tell me. There may be something that I can use, moving forward, and I keep a sort of running list of little notes that I picked up from the summertime, just put it on a Word document, whatever, and just, it's there. So when we're playing this team, it's there for me. So stick-to-itiveness is really, really important. And also, you got to be able to be honest with yourself to know that this was really good or this was not so good. I guess I'm fortunate in a way that anytime I mess up, I know. I know. It's like I don't have to go back to listen to the tape to know when it happened or how. I know it happened, and then how do you get better from that? Because there are very precious few of us that have ever done the perfect broadcast. Scully might have. Costas might have, but I mean, we're talking a handful of people here. I know I'm not one of them, but you're always, looking for that night when it really does all come together.
So, how did you approach, as a father, your son Jeffrey, who been watching your career and thinking, I might want to do that?
Well, he was pretty funny because as a teenager, I'm preparing to do a game one night, and he says to me, I don't think I want to do what you do. He says, you're working too hard.
Okay, there you go. But he caught on pretty quickly.
Well,
then.
no, but he, I mean, he loves sports.
Yeah.
And he was going to find a way to be involved somehow. And it's like any of us who were kids and say, whether do we want to be on the air? Do we want to be a writer? Work for a team? What do we do? How do we do it? He was going to be involved in some way. And so, I had a little worry that he would find a way somehow. What was great ultimately when we were at ESPN and toward the end of ESPN, he started doing a little more work, and we actually got to do some shows together.
Very nice.
And it was that was.
That's the proud
that was a dad
moment.
moment. I was kind of losing it.
Yeah,
I really was. He had gone on when I would do those Sunday night shows, and especially with Ducey. Mike Ducey was phenomenal with him, and at one point they literally wanted to put him on, and I said, okay, this is here it is now, and he was probably 11, 12, something like that, and. He was well-spoken and thoughtful, and I was really, really proud of him. And I knew he could do it.
Yeah.
But Brian, the business has changed.
Yeah,
and
sure.
Right when he was starting to get some real traction in what he was doing, ESPN went away, and so we had to adjust. And now he's working for this company called chatsports.com downtown in the digital space where. I'm not quite sure exactly what he does. I would love to actually watch him do what he does, but he has refused all of my entrees to come to the studio to watch him work. And, of course, I said, what's wrong with you? It's like every time you wanted to come with me, I took you everywhere I went. Why can't I come with you? He says, you'll just ask too many questions. You'll mess things up.
You'll mess it up, yeah. Well, what do you? I know you give back a lot. You attend a lot of things. You support a lot of. Is the Coops Kids Foundation still going? Tell us a little bit about that.
That's really the product of my truly spectacular wife, Karen Berlin Cooperstein.
She is.
She is.
Yeah.
She has always had that gene, and if there is anything that I have learned in 15 years of marriage. It is the concept of the nonprofits and the concept of giving back and how you go about doing that. For several years, about 8-9 years ago, Brad Sham, Eric Nadell, and I did an event called Talk of the Town, where we each chose our own children's charities to raise money for. Basically, on the heels of one night, we were all together and Karen's listening to all this and says, people would pay for this. People would pay a lot of money for this.
Like a true PR person. She's telling you this.
Exactly. Takes one to know one, right? Yeah. And so that's how that was born. And we raised a lot of money. Our charity was Texas Scottish Rite Hospital, and we're still supporters of them today. And if that had never happened, I wouldn't have known. Maybe I would have known. Maybe I would have put, but nothing would have been made so clear to me. That how you do it, the mechanics behind the whole nonprofit and charity world and what you do. And she's just the best. I mean, she's got it figured out. She is such a master of the details, the master of organization, things that I am not. Now, I can be organized about my work, about, how am I preparing to do a game and all that. But generally speaking, in my life, I am not that way. Not even close to being that way. She is. I mean, you look at her desk and you look at my desk, and that's really all.
Which is which.
Right? You know who's who.
All right.
We give, and we're proud to give, and there are a lot of kids who need support, and we're willing to do that. And it's just it's a blessing. It really is a blessing. It's become something that I'm really proud of, and I'm just proud to be. I'm proud to have learned more about it, because otherwise I don't know if I ever would have.
Well, it's a great foundation, and you're great at what you do. So just keep doing it for many, many more seasons.
I appreciate it.
Thanks for being on the show here today.
I plan to.
All right, Coop, take care.
All right, Brian, thanks.
Thanks for joining me on this episode of Built for This. Be sure to follow Built for This on your favorite listening platform and share it with a friend. Join me on the next episode when I will share entertaining stories of inspiration, encouragement, and purpose-driven experiences. What are you built for? Built for This is produced and recorded by Heart Media DFW.